minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
This is Sterling Gates. You're listening to the Flash Podcast.
Well, hello, buddy, and welcome back to a special edition episode of the Flash Podcast. Your prize for all things to CW is the Flash, starring Grant Gustin as Barry Allen, aka the Flash. I'm your host, Andy B, as always, and this is our penultimate special edition episode. And it's crazy, but we're here because next week we're gonna do something very special for all you fans, and then we're gonna get into the final 5 episodes of the Flash. I'm joined today. Toddy, Breathe, and Lady. I gave them a week off, and so, but I am joined by a very special guest, joining us live from Central City, neglecting both her children and her not husband, boyfriend, Joe West, Mrs. Seal Horton, aka the Seal. Miss Horton, welcome to the podcast. How you doing tonight?
I love being the Seal and the star of this TV show. I have so much extra time now that my daughters are out of town.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome back Mr. Craig Byrne from Flash TV News, KryptonSite, KSI TV, Green Arrow TV, DC Legends TV, everything else. Craig, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I had a surgery a couple weeks ago, so I'm still kind of recovering, but things are getting back to normal, which is wonderful. So very excited for our new episode of The Flash that's coming up with the return of Green Arrow and Wally and all kinds of cool people. So
yeah, it's only a few weeks away now, and well, it's funny because it's funny that you're here because I told you this. I think we were talking yesterday about it, but we but this is one of those things I wanted to do since season 0. That this was kind of like I have like a secret Google Doc that only I can access, that I have where I put various like comics I want to talk on the podcast about, various Flash media I wanted to talk about, and also like kind of just special type of episodes, and one of them included all the Flash movies and TV shows that almost happened but didn't before we got the one that we have today, because there's been listen, superhero in Hollywood has been through quite the ordeal, so to speak. A lot of things ended up in development hell back in the day. So for this episode, we're going to go through a big history lesson of many Flash shows and movies that almost happened but did it, what we know about them, and you just kind of react to it together, because I'm sure you guys have probably never heard of them. So it's I'm very excited. It's been on my it's been on my list for many years, and also it's ironic because back in the day, this was always something I wanted Craig to be part of, and thankfully he is willing to, because I always love podcasting with you, Craig. So, and especially today, and I'm gonna let you guys know, so in case you notice that something is a little bit off with me, I usually don't do this. But my grandmother, who is my last remaining grandparent, is she might be on her last legs. We're hoping that the surgery that's coming up is gonna give her some extra time, but I ask everyone, if you can, to please keep my grandmother in your thoughts and prayers, because she's the closest grandparent I have ever had, and I learned it today. And I didn't want to cancel the show because I need to be distracted right now. So if you guys can, please keep her in your thoughts, and just if you notice something is a little off of me, it's just I'm thinking of, but also trying to make the show for you guys. So that's what's going on, sadly. But we don't have any news in the Flash season 9. I mean, there's not going to be any more news for a while, for the rest of the season, because the show is wrapped. The show is in post-production on, I think, the last 2 episodes or something. And I think at this point we've seen they pretty much revealed all they get. No, they haven't actually revealed everything yet. But some of those things you guys are gonna have to be tuning in for.
Well, sorry.
And I was gonna ask you, but because everyone is asking about how 909 is, I'm getting. Well, I guess let's share some fun news. Are you confirmed for what?
An interview?
Maybe an interview?
Yeah. Oh, and also I spoke to Stephen Amell, which will be on Flash TV News.
Yes, I'm very excited. I actually, because something I get told a little bit what Craig gets in his interviews, but that's how I was like, I want to read it. I want to read it when it comes out. So I look for that interview. I think, when are you dropping it? Have you? Because I'm going to say you're doing
early next week.
Early next week, and then the post-mortem, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It's just a short post-mortem. Like one of those things where it's like you cannot reveal it in this episode. Yeah. But I wanted to say to you, Andy, you say there's no news coming, but we need to get our big reveal of Cecile Horton's costume as the Seal.
I cannot legally confirm nor deny that there is some costume. There might be photos out there, but I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I guess what I can reveal, and I think Craig will be doing this next week too. But I will be talking to Daniel Panabaker on Monday morning Pacific time, and so if you guys have any questions, this is for her episode that she directed, episode 9, which Craig has seen. I haven't seen it yet. I know some things about it from sources over the last few months, but I'm excited to see it. So hope you guys I will give you guys a little take on social media in the coming days. But if you guys have questions for Daniel Panabaker, you can tweet him at the Flash Podcast, and we will try to do our best to get as many answers for her as possible, because I'm sure you all have thoughts on Miss Keogh, Miss Caitlin, and Miss Frost. Yeah, so. But Craig, are you ready? Are you ready to jump into this deep dive? I guess that's what the kills are calling it.
I'm ready for this. Also, I just wanted to point out, because I'm a couple of years older than you are, Andy, and in the early '90s, there used to be a magazine called Comic Scene. It was like before there was even like Wizard or any of those things, which were a big deal in the '90s. But the last like 2 or 3 pages were always a list of in development like projects. And a lot of the projects that we'll be talking about today will obviously be in there. Like Unlimited Powers was on that list. I mean, I remember buying an issue of that magazine with John Wesley Shipp as, Barry Allen on the cover. Both as Barry Allen with his lab coat, which I think might have been the same photo they used on that magazine the other week.
Oh, really?
And yeah, his lab coat, and then like the Flash and costume behind there. It's also funny how everything kind of comes back, because I know there was also an issue with like the Flash, Ninja Turtles, and the Simpsons, and all 3 of those things still exist. I think Swamp Thing was on that cover too, actually. But it all comes back eventually. But yeah, I see Kenneth Crayley Jr. is commenting about it. Yeah. So we will, just so everybody knows, we will be talking about Unlimited Powers. And, there's all kinds of stuff. Andy did so much research. Like, I saw his list, and I'm like, this is going to be a lot of fun. So I hope everybody enjoys this as much as I think I will enjoy it.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. I've done a PowerPoint for everyone. So starting with The Flash, the TV show and movies that almost happened. And we're going to start with one that I think many are not expecting, and that is Jeph Loeb working on The Flash. In the late 1980s, it was reported that he was working on. Well, it wasn't. I guess it wasn't revealed until like many years later. But he was attached to write a movie for The Flash. But according to Variety,
it's all connected.
It's all connected. But the project became one of the many unproduced projects, according to Variety. If because you've met Jeph Loeb. You've interviewed him several times. You've known him for almost like 20 years now. Like because you knew him from Smallville.
I knew him from Smallville. It's interesting to note that if he was doing The Flash in the late 80s, it was probably somewhere around the time was after he did Teen Wolf, which he co-created, and then he did a Challengers of the Unknown miniseries for DC Comics. So maybe working on the Flash, a possible Flash movie or project, is what got him on DC's radar, which is kind of interesting. I never knew about the Jeph Loeb thing until you had brought it up. But obviously he's had his hand in wanting to do a DC thing for a while, and eventually he did.
Yeah, I wonder who his Flash would have been, because because he's had a huge success in comics, and this was obviously what helped him land on Smallville in the early 2000s. But I really wonder which Flash he would have gone for. Like, he doesn't seem like a Barry guy to me, but I also don't know if he was necessarily into Wally.
Well,
But
we remember that at this point in the late 80s, Barry died in 1985. I think Wally became the Flash in 87. I could be wrong, but Wally might have been so new that they didn't really think about it. And of course, when we got the John Wesley Shipp TV series, it was Barry, but he actually did have some of the traits of Wally from the comics, like needing to eat a lot, or Dr. Tina McGee was a character from the Wally West run. So, I don't know.
Well, it's we're just getting started because there's so many more parts to come. But who knows? Maybe if someone sees this video at some point, maybe they will talk to him and ask, like, "Hey, what was the Flash movie going to be about?" Next, we have, and this is kind of a late edition. So this actually comes from, this is a podcast I actually started listening to last year. It's called Superhero Stuff You Should Know. They're great over there, talking about unmade superhero project that almost happened. Somehow get a hold of various scripts and whatnot. And this was something they shared about 2 months ago. And the video to their episode will be linked in your show notes and in the video description. Go check them out. It's a great podcast, and tell them the Flash podcast sent you, because they do some great stuff there. But in 1987, because Craig hasn't seen this, so this was a story by Todd Holland, who did The Wizard, and this was and the script was by Jim Strain of Jumanji, and there was a Flash movie in 1987 being pitched on would have featured a Barry Allen origin story and Barry going up against aliens.
It's Mopey the alien, right?
Sorry?
Is it Mopey the alien that supposedly turned Barry into the Flash? That's a very classic 1960s comic that was bad.
Well, I'm not sure, because I know that what would have happened is, and this, you will get a kick out of this, was that the story would have seen aliens landing on Earth in a meteor shower. Ooh, where have we heard that one before? And in this universe, Barry gets his powers through something that they're calling it in the script, like alien energy spheres. So instead of getting struck by lightning, it is essentially this energy in this alien sphere that makes him get his speed. And Iris is not called Iris in this story. She's called, like, oh my god, what was she called? She was called
Caitlin.
No, not Caitlin. Caitlin didn't exist back then.
Just kidding.
I'm just pulling up my notes quickly, but it was definitely she was basically an Iris type character, but it was something like I'm trying to find what it was.
Cecile.
So ironically, Cecile does exist. It did exist in the comics, because back in the day when they did what's it called, the trial of the Flash, and where she was actually a good lawyer. Believe it or not,
Cecile Horton was from the comics. I actually did not know that.
Wait, are you actually with me right now?
I'm learning this right now. That's kind of amazing. My favorite character from the Flash was in the comics. This is amazing. I'm gonna have to buy
favorite
this.
Character. Yeah, she actually did her job.
Get Wally West. I'm all about Cecile.
Yeah, but there was an Iris West type character, and they those guys did a full breakdown on that screen. You guys can check out after this. But like, this sounded like they were like trying to lean into Laura. Her name was Laura, and not Iris. But yeah, essentially, they were trying to make this movie. It's very, very bizarre. It's kind of cool, funky at the same time. It sounds like very typical, like Aliens type style movies from the 1980s. Yes, dude, Rachel. That's I was thinking it sounded like Invasion. Yeah, this would have. I don't. Based on what they said in the episode, it didn't sound like this was going to be like in like a massive DC universe. There was like a Superman comic reference at some point in the script, but I don't know what they would have done if this. But I don't know how I like Barry getting his powers from aliens. Like it kind of like removes that specialness um getting struck by lightning and because that's more iconic than like, oh, some alien sphere. Again, it sounds like back in the like those days they were like embracing comics but not completely. Does that make sense?
Well, it's like there was that Masters of the Universe movie that made so many changes to the lore just for whatever reason. It sounds like for the Flash they're kind of doing something similar. So,
Yeah, and I don't know what basically. I mean, the movie never happened, and that's just one of many projects. But like, yeah, it was. It's interesting that they were trying to do Flash all the way back in the '80s because I don't know what that would look like visually, like because I don't know like if they had thought of the idea that they were doing for John Wesley Shipp's Flash TV show at that point. So I'm definitely curious, but definitely guys, go check out that episode. They break down the whole script and let them know Flash Podcast sent you. Now, this is I think going to strike a lot of people's interest. So, for people who watch the Flash TV show from John Wesley Shipp, that show was not initially the first vision from Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo. So, in an interview with Den of Geek, we love Mike Cicchini over there in August 2020, they had actually initially pitched a pilot for a DC drama called Unlimited Powers. While Flash was part of the show, it was more of a DC ensemble. Like, think basically Legends of Tomorrow, but not like as whack because this gets dark, y'all. So Barry was going to be the Flash of the series, but done in a very, very different way because the pilot would essentially started with Barry being in his 40s, and he's just come out after having served a 15-year prison sentence. Yeah, somehow they took the guy who worked in CSI and made him a criminal. But in this universe, superheroes were now outlawed. Bilson and they were tackling this as like an adult take on the superhero genre. And in the comics at the time where there was Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, American Flag, and The Rocketeer, those were some of their favorite comics. In the interview they talked to with Den of Geek, and he took partial inspiration from that, from those books for the show. And so the lineup, I want to see how many of these Craig knows because I don't know if I would know all of these names.
I know all of them.
Okay, so the Flash was going to be part of it. Green Arrow, and a character named Dr. Occult, a character named Block from the Legion of Superheroes. Wally West was going to also be part of it, and we were going to meet Oliver Queen's teenage daughter. I don't know if her name was going to be Mia. No. I certainly don't think her mother was Felicity Smoke, but that's what we were like basically we could have seen Green Arrow 2 before Cat McNamara got the role.
What I find interesting is that Block is a character from like the 30th century, and like the Legion of Superheroes, and Block is kind of like the Thing. So I kind of wondered if they were trying to go for like a Thing-like character, because you kind of have like like Dr. Occult seems like their way of having a Doctor Strange-like character. So obviously they had their influences, because Dr. Occult, as far as I know, isn't used too often in present day, but I believe he was from the same creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who did Superman. Appeared in those early issues of Action Comics. Again, I could be wrong, but yeah, I think that's a really interesting lineup, and I think it's especially interesting that we had a teenage daughter for Oliver Queen decades before we ever, had that in Arrow. So yeah, I think that's cool, and I think it was a better idea to like whittle it down to just one hero to do the Flash series that John Wesley Shipp was in. And, I think that might have also been inspired by the success of Batman, the Tim Burton movie.
Oh, yes.
Because, they got Danny Elfman to do the score, and, it was dark, which probably made it easier to do the visual effects too. And, you got to consider the Flash was the most expensive show on TV when it was on in 1990. I can only imagine how much this Unlimited Powers show would have cost.
I'm trying to think, like, if they had cast, let's say they cast John Wesley Shipp still as Barry, like, who would have been a good Oliver Queen to his Barry? Like who was like a Stephen Amell or Justin Hartley type of actor back in the 90s that they could have gotten.
I think we should leave this one to the people watching on YouTube and such to let us know who they
Yeah,
think.
let us know in the comments. Mine Gaps has a good point. Knowing 80s comics, Shadow would have likely been the mother. Oh, so they made Shadow. They would have probably made her. They would have made Oliver's daughter like biracial. That would have been interesting.
But would CBS have done it in 1990? Unfortunately.
Oh, that's true.
We would have had a show where Green Arrow and Black Canary actually ended up together. Who knows?
Imagine. When I heard about this project, it sounded like, oh my god, this is like a dark version of Legends, but like a little like all over the place, because I don't know how much I would like the idea of a Barry who had been in prison for 15 years, and also like they were starting to show at a very late point, is like in his 40s, and because most network executives would probably want to get someone young and have him, be able to get as many young actors as possible to be able to run this for a few seasons. But
you have to realize though, 1990 or 89 in TV was much different. You had some like detective type shows like Columbo, where the lead actors were in their 50s or 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a lot of stuff. They were doing new Perry Mason movies. Even something like Magnum PI, I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Selleck was at least 40 by the time that show was over. I could be wrong. But, it was definitely different. They weren't really aiming at the 18 to 49 demographic until things like Fox and the WB came around. They were the ones who really aimed at the young people first. But what I also find interesting is, Unlimited Powers had such a comic book background, whereas when the John Wesley Shipp series started, like CBS didn't want it to be too comic booky at first. And you'll notice that characters like the Trickster and things like that actually came in the latter half of season 1. Once they had established themselves as a show, then finally they could do the comic booky stuff. And I don't know if a TV audience would have, I don't know what they would have made of a character like Block, for example. Just tuning in. Maybe they did need something like, the Batman movie to kind of like open the door for CBS to even consider doing a show like this.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the thing is that it could have worked for its time if it had happened, but eventually it did. We know that it evolved into the Flash TV show that ran on CBS for one season. But yeah, Unlimited Powers, it's also an interesting title. Like, instead of going for like something like title, like something like a group title from the comics, they kind of just call it this. But in this interview with Daniel Geek, Bilson described Ultimate Power as one of my favorite scripts that we wrote. And I quote from Daniel Geek, but it's near dystopian vision of a world secretly run by supervillains, and most heroes haven't been forced into hiding or retirement was a little too much for CBS at the time. Though it sounds incredibly timely right now in an era where The Boys and Watchmen are perceived TV darlings. And you know what? This could have been a way for them to integrate Amanda Waller and Checkmate in a way, because one of the arcs I love from Smallville was when she came in for the Justice Society arc and they were hunting down the old remaining JSA members. So this could have, I almost wonder if that's what they were leaning toward, but he just never talked about it publicly.
I don't think that was too possible, because Amanda Waller, I don't think came around until 86 or 87 with the Legends series, and the new Suicide Squad didn't premiere until around that time either. And I think Checkmate premiered in 88 as far as comics. So they probably wouldn't have time to even know that those concepts existed in DC yet. They were so new.
That's fair. I mean, I could say a Amanda Waller type character, though, that they probably
maybe. I see Mind the Gap brought up a good point about how genre TV in the 90s was weird, and also it might have only lasted one season, but it would have been talked about at conventions for 30 years. Just like The Flash. I mean, it's like, I love that John Wesley Shipp now is seeing all the love from the fans and how much we all just truly appreciated his show.
Yeah, the pilot was really ahead of its time.
It was kind of fast. Yes, I said that on purpose.
I know you said that on purpose. Now the next thing is this is going to be, because I think most of you have heard of this, but for those of you who haven't, I'm excited to see your reaction for the first time. And that was CBS's Justice League of America TV series. Now this wasn't a traditional Flash show; it was a Justice League show, but it was y'all. This was weird. So in 1997, this became one of maybe the most mocked superhero properties of all time. Now, it never made it to air in America, but the pilot was shown in Canada, and you guys can probably find that episode on YouTube. But essentially, think of this as Parks and Rec / The Office meets DC, where we have this Justice League crew. They're doing all these mock-up interviews talking about their life as a superhero, basically in past tense to imply, they're talking about this now because they're no longer superheroes. Now, for any CW fan out there, so our Mr. Guy Gardner over here in the middle was played by none other than Matthew Settle, who was Dan Humphrey's father on Gossip Girl.
Well, the thing that's really odd about his Green Lantern is he looks like Kyle. He has Kyle's mask. His name is Guy Gardner. He acts boring like Hal. Sorry, Hal Jordan fans. And his costume is not green. It's teal. It's turquoise. I understand it. But I also didn't like... I saw this pilot because it was like... A lot of people had bootlegs at conventions. I remember buying a videotape of it in like 98 or so. And it treated the characters like jokes. Like... I think Barry Allen was kind of like a loser who couldn't keep a job or something.
Yeah, I was unemployed. I was like that was hurtful.
And you see how terrible this mask is, and it's so weird when you consider this was only 6 or 7 years after The Flash ended, but it was also the year Lois and Clark ended. And I feel like that show, at least when it started, was a very sophisticated, sexy show with costumes you wouldn't laugh at. Well, maybe the Ultra Woman costume you'd laugh at. But you look at these costumes in this lineup, and none of them look good. Do you have a picture of Martian Manhunter to show everybody?
I don't, sadly. But like that was... I remember laughing so hard. Just so people who wonder like who these characters are, just if they don't know. So I'm gonna start from left to right. On the left we have Ray Palmer, aka the Atom, played by John Kassir. On the second we have Michelle Hurd as
BB. Isn't she in Star Trek Picard?
Oh my gosh, she is. Michelle Hurd as BB DaCosta, aka Fire.
Oh my gosh. I knew I'd seen her somewhere before.
Yeah, also she was also on Gossip Girl. Kenny Johnson as Barry Allen, aka The Flash. Matthew Settle as Guy Gardner, aka Green Lantern. And then Kim Oja as Tori Olafsdottir / Ice. And we had basically, they didn't call him Weather Wizard, they call him the Weatherman, who was basically like their Weather Wizard, played by the late Miguel Ferrer. And their Martian Manhunter looks insanely weird, but also it was a white dude playing him. So
it was David Ogden Stiers from MASH. But the interesting thing about Miguel Ferrer is he was a huge comic book fan, and with Bill Mumy from Lost in Space, he had a band called Seduction of the Innocent, which was named after a book that kind of targeted comics in the 1950s for being too violent, and that's why we have the comics code. But Miguel Ferrer also wrote some comics, at least in the 1980s. He did a series called The Comet Man with Peter David, who's like one of the most well-loved comic book writers. He did a long run on the Hulk. Also did the Young Justice comic for a few years, back when the team was Tim Drake, Superboy, Cassie Sands-Mark, and Impulse.
Yeah, I remember he was also the voice of Vandal Savage on Young Justice.
There you go.
But yeah, this pilot was I've seen it too, and it is and this was even after I had seen like Parks and Recreation and like that kind of type of comedy format. It doesn't work for superheroes because this felt like
in Legends of Tomorrow season 1.
Yes, I can confidently say that, and it was just
Worse
it
than
is super.
Flash season 6. Okay, sorry.
Um, season 6 was actually good. It's season 7 a lot of people despise.
Which one is the one where Iris was in the mirror all the time? That was 6, wasn't it?
Half of season 6, beginning of season 7.
Oh, yeah, we
But
don't
I
discuss that anymore.
but the pilot was it's been again, it's like you can see like in basically like there were times in the late 2000s when YouTube got popular where like some people would use shots from the pilot for like their fan traders, but it was horrendous. But the pilot exists somewhere out there on YouTube. If you guys want to watch it, you can. But it's also surprising that almost 20 15 plus years later, this would be the same network that would bring Supergirl to life for one season.
You know,
Um,
I'm low-key slightly disappointed none of these people showed up in Crisis. That would have been
why would they?
Why wouldn't they?
Why
I
would
mean, we
they?
got Burt Ward going, "Holy red skies of death."
But Birdwood is like iconic though.
But these
This
people are iconically bad, so that would be fun.
so you wanted us to waste money on
Sure.
cameo. Okay,
I mean, I don't think any of these actors are expensive if all they're in is Gossip Girl.
fair enough. Well, the next pilot we're gonna talk about, this is we're gonna now is an actual Flash TV show, and this is the WB's Flash show that was commissioned, that was announced by Variety in 2003. On September 11, it was announced that they were already looking at developing their fall slate.
I
What
remember
about
going and buying that issue of Variety the day it came out, and I actually have that in my other room right now.
you should frame that page.
Yeah, it's so funny because it never happened. But
yeah, on that September 11, 2003, Variety reported that the WB was looking to add another DC property for their fall 2004 slate as they put the Flash in development. Tom Komarnicki, who's known of Resistance fame, was penning the script for the pilot and would have served as an executive producer on the series for Warner Bros. Television. The pilot got a quote-unquote hefty penalty order to it in case it didn't get picked up. And guys, this is, you might think that we're like making this up, but this is actually what we knew about the show. So first of all, like Smallville at the time, which was WB's number hit show at the time, this show was going to have a no tights, no fights type of rule, as the Flash would not be donning a suit. He would be living by a mantra, a calling that I read as follows: live fast so others don't die young.
and he also lived in Gotham City and did something with time travel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We will get there. We will get there. Carolyn Bernstein, who was the WB executive VP of drama development at the time, said the twist that Peter Roth talked to us about was incorporating time travel into the Flash mythology. We've been talking internally about doing a time tunnel style show, and this was the perfect way to blend time travel with an established franchise we know is beloved by people who know the comic. Per the character description, our hero will be a fresh out of college Gothamite who discovered he has the ability to move very fast, so fast, in fact, that he can travel backward or forward in time. He will use that skill to right wrongs, save lives, and kick ass. Komarnicki said, this is a story about a guy who's aimlessly drifting through life and barely moving at the speed of light when he discovered his calling is to move at the speed of light. According to Komarnicki, there would be self-contained storylines each week in addition to ongoing plot points. So if you all thought that, this is he's basically saying that you would have had interludes and graphic novels before they even were a thing. Every week he will have a mission, a la Mission Impossible. It's a big fun adventure series. There's also a mentor character who will train him, and there's a legacy of fighters before him.
What if it was Max Mercury?
That would have been. I think the mentor would have been Jay, but this is what I don't understand. There were a legacy of Flashes before him. So because here's the thing. We never knew which Flash this was going to be. They never said Barry, Wally, Bart, or Jay. All they said was he would not be a brooding superhero. He would recognize that his new life means plenty of compromises. When it's in the future, he's missing his present. He's really giving up some of his own life to help others. And this was the first and last update we ever got of the project, as nothing ever came about it.
So I feel like I heard.
What do you feel? What do you feel, Cecile?
Yes, well, I'm Cecile, so I feel. No, I feel like I heard somewhere that it was going to be Jay Garrick of all characters. I can't say that for sure,
As the
but
mentor or as the lead?
as the lead. I could be wrong on this because this was a long time ago, but there are a couple of things that, just you reading this off that just kind of hit my head. I mean, one, obviously, if they're going to have a show about Barry traveling through time and changing things, it should be called Damn It, Barry, because, well, But to be completely serious, though, I cannot believe in 10 years that Smallville was on the WB, CW, whatever, they didn't just get Al Gough and Miles Miller to do this because they could have cracked the code. And I think Al and Miles could have made a good Flash show in 2003. And of course, we'll talk about what happens when Al
No.
and Miles touch the Flash very soon.
There's so many things that are wrong with this idea. First of all, why Gotham? If Smallville couldn't even use Bruce Wayne, how would the WB get away with even having a show set in Gotham City? I know there was Birds of Prey, but it's like they had to do it like as New Gotham City in the future. So it's like all
You
this
have to
compromise.
realize this was a year after Birds of Prey failed on the WB. I liked Birds of Prey, but it only lasted
I liked it like for what it was. I mean, it's cheesy as heck, but also like I like they even tried it.
I think maybe they just assumed, what cities in DC do fans know? And they're just like, Gotham City. I don't know why. Or maybe whoever wrote this Todd Komarnicki or whatever, might have just assumed that Gotham City is the New York of DC or something. I don't know. Since we haven't read this script, maybe this is a challenge for you, Andy. Try to find this Todd Komarnicki person and do an interview with him sometime. If you don't, I'll try.
Is he still alive?
I'm sure he's still alive. He's out there somewhere. I don't know. I think it would be very interesting to learn more about this because, I mean, I was super excited. I could have had another popular website 20 years ago, Andy.
Another thing that I don't also understand about this is, again, they're insisting on not doing the costume. I don't think they would have necessarily gotten another Tom Welling type of actor who was like against wearing the suit, because it's like, so what? Because this is the reason I use this specific photo, because I almost wonder if this is what he was gonna like. The logo was probably gonna be there somewhere, but because this is from the Flash year 1 that came out during the DC Rebirth era. And I'm like, this is essentially what I think they were going for. Now, Time Tunnel, is that a show or a movie that you're familiar with?
Yes. So Time Tunnel was like a time travel show from the 1960s. And in the year 2002, I think there was a Time Tunnel pilot that was made for, I think it was Fox. I don't know if Warner Brothers produced it, but it's likely. And that pilot was actually released on a DVD of the classic Time Tunnel series. It's also interesting to note Warner Brothers did have a time travel series in 1997. They did adaptation of Time Cop, which was created by Marc Verheiden, who wrote for Smallville, and Al Gough and Miles Miller were story editors on that series, I believe. So that's how they all got together. And it only lasted about half a season. I liked that show a lot, actually. So that's why I bring it up. But, so Warner
Would that have worked with The Flash?
So what?
Would that have worked with The Flash?
No, because he traveled through time through this, like, it's almost like well, I guess Time Tunnel was the same. I think in Time Tunnel, they just went through this like portal that was in their lab. And in Time Cop, he went on this little like train type thing that would take him back. But yeah, I mean, I could see it working for the Flash. I mean, personally speaking, I would have been more interested in a series that takes place in present day. I think even with the current Flash TV series, the time travel stuff got a little out of hand at a certain point. And I think it's better when we're in present day with the characters we like and nobody's screwing things up. It also, this concept sounded weirdly kind of Quantum Leap-like as well, where he goes through time and fixes what's gone wrong and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if they wanted something Quantum Leap-like as well. But yeah, I think that, I mean, it would have been very different. Dawn Ostroff probably would have tried to kill that too when she took over, but it would have been interesting. I would have loved to have had another DC show in the 2000s.
It's weird that there's also like, because I wonder if this had gone forward, if there was going to be any attempts to try and connect it to Smallville.
Well, they had another thing that I'm trying to connect in my head. I feel like around that time, Warner Brothers or the WB was changing like network presidents. Because like I know at one point they had some series they had picked up to series, and then the president of the network changed, and they're like, no, we don't want that anymore. Like Global Frequency was a pilot that was made. It was a mid-season replacement.
Which one of them, Craig? There's been so many Global Frequency attempts.
And there probably won't be any more because Warren Ellis had his problems. But yeah, no, it's interesting how that kind of like changes in regime. And I also suspect the WB might not have been able to afford this.
This sounds like something would have been too expensive every week, like going to the past, going to the future.
Like if this is 2003 or 2004, I forget what time you said it was.
It was aimed for 2004.
Okay, so that was the same year they had Dark Shadows in development too. Which that pilot was a mess. It should have been good because it's a great concept. And I know if Eric Wallace is listening, Eric, you need to just make a Dark Shadows show. Thank you very much. You can even put Cecile in it if you want to. But no, but like I feel like at this point the WB was kind of like fading away and on its last kind of legs. I mean, they got lucky that Supernatural was a hit, but like near the end, it was a lot of flops. Like, and then they had to merge with UPN to become the CW, and that would last about 17 years, and then some company would ruin the CW.
Yeah. I also like the fact that the way that Carolyn Bernstein talks about how Peter Roth was like thinking that he was like making something. I love Peter Roth. He's a nice man. I met him once. He's lovely. But I love that Peter Roth made it seem like that. Oh my god, we're doing something revolutionary with the Flash by adding time travel to it. I'm like, have you all not read comics? Like time travel has been part of the Flash mythos for quite some while.
Oh yeah, for sure. But also you have to realize Peter Roth is the one who was he was trying to get a TV show about a young Superman, about Superboy essentially, made for like decades. And that ended up being one of the most successful shows in Warner Brothers television history. So
Peter Roth is the GOAT. Like I love that man. He I remember like when I met him in 2019 at the last Comic-Con I ever went to.
You ruined it. I'm kidding.
Oh, thanks. But I remember because I had talked to I had basically somehow connected with a different Warner Bros. TV executive president there, who then told me like you should go talk to Peter at some point. I'm like sure. And then I met Peter, and I told him, hey, I just want to say thank you for all the shows that you have made possible over the last 20 plus of my life. Because I grew up with all these shows. Smallville was, put me on the path for a lot of ways. And he said. Like he was so full of glee, Craig. You've met the man. Like, how much he geeks out. Like when someone like shares the same passion as him. And he's like, "Listen, where you are right now, I think he called me kid or something. Where you are right now is where I was all those years ago as someone who just genuinely loves television, and it was, yeah. So again, I just think it was funny that like, did he know the time travel already existed with the Flash mythology or not? So
probably did. I mean, that's how they were like, well, what properties do we have that we could plug into this? Essentially. But I mean, also just think about Peter Roth and his passion for this. Yeah. Notice when Warner Brothers started going downhill is when he left. Just saying.
I agree. We can talk about the current Warner Bros. TV president right now because I don't agree with a lot of her choices. But yeah, also the idea that there would be other Flashes before this Flash. If this was meant to be Jay, were they essentially just gonna make him Barry Allen but call him Jay Garrick and then
it's more like the Guy Gardner in the Justice League pilot, probably.
So like it sounded like really whack. But you know what? Maybe I will make this a mission of trying to find this man and have a chat. Now, Craig, we're gonna move to something that you. All right. One of the things this is why Craig and I became friends to begin with. But we're gonna move to.
Are you gonna show my page from KryptonSite?
Do you want me to?
You should show it. Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, it's Bart, my former neighbor.
Yeah, while you tell them the story about how you know this man, and while I try to
Well,
get this
actually, no. The first time I ever interviewed Kyle Gallner was for my season. I guess for my season 4, we ended up living in the same building. Not planned. It just kind of happened that way. So I'm still in contact with Kyle. He's a great guy. He's got kids, and he doesn't live in LA anymore. But I know he would jump at the chance to be in like the Flash in any capacity.
Yeah, that's a big miss, I think, on the Flash TV show, never getting Cal Gallner. But this is KryptonSite's Flash
Well, I
coverage.
haven't updated that page since 2006.
You have not touched this at all.
Damn.
Oh wow.
Originally,
Oh wait! Look at this.
of the Flash, the cover of the Flash number 208.
Feeling impulsive, Bart Allen returns to Smallville and a league takes shape. January 2007 on the CW. Justice. Click here for spoilers.
Oh my, well, the spoiler click doesn't work, but yeah. So, what's very interesting about Kyle's casting as the Flash is I was originally given some completely other kid's name as being cast by somebody who was one of my contacts with Smallville. His name was Ben Jellin. He was like a musician. There we go. He's right there. And I did a little speed blur on his picture. I don't know why this person, because it was an executive involved with the show. It wasn't Alan Miles that told me. But Alan Miles never corrected me either. But then, of course, it ended up being Kyle. And he was great. And, of course, when he showed up on Smallville, he was playing Bart Allen, but he used the aliases of, like, Barry Allen, Wally West, Jay Garrick, which was kind of like a little shout out. As far as I know, they never considered him for a spinoff, which at the time just surprised the heck out of me because, like, if the WB was trying to do a Flash project and here you have a Flash that everybody liked, I think the only thing going against, like, doing a spinoff with Kyle, which wouldn't have been a problem for a long time, is he was only 17 when he got the role, so his mom had to be on set and everything.
And probably the Actors Guild rules were probably a little stricter back then. Like, he probably could have been a supporting character in a Flash show, but he couldn't be the lead because 17 is, how many hours is the kid allowed to work per day? So
yeah, and I don't want to skip ahead too much, but when I talked to Steve DeKnight for my Smallville season 6 companion guide, there was a whole he talked about how they were developing like a spinoff with those characters from the episode Justice, which was in season 6. And I asked him straight up, I was like, because I think it might be in Bart's first appearance, he makes a joke about being from the future. And I was like, was that truer than we know? And he's like, well, if we had gotten to go to series with Justice League, we would have explored that might have been the case after all, and that Bart was lying when we met him earlier. And I thought that was really fascinating. And again, Smallville's Justice League episode got such huge ratings that
you posted it on my birthday.
Oh, well, there you go, on your birthday. It got such huge ratings that, like, it's stupid that at least didn't get to be a spinoff. Because everybody loved Justin Hartley's Green Arrow, everybody loved Kyle as Bart, Lee Thompson Young as Cyborg, everybody loved Aquabro. All these actors ended up doing good things after anyway. So maybe they would have been hamstrung and we might not have gotten the current run of CW shows if Justice had spun off. But it's kind of fun to think about sometimes.
Yeah, I'm now we're going to go to a rumor you posted, adding fuel to the rumor first that Fire that first came up in a KryptonSite column, speculating a Flash spin-off from the Smallville may be in the works. David sent us to a Dark Horizon. Oh, I haven't heard that word in a long time. Reporter said the following. At the Comic Books to TV talkie, which mainly focused on classic Tales from the Crypt, it was revealed that WB is working on another series of The Flash, sort of like the TBS version that had Mark Hamill in it, and there's more in Crypt Land to come. If you all would like to see a spin-off, a good start would be to get as many people as you can know, particularly those with Nielsen boxes, to be sure to watch the October 20th episode. Of course, our sort are still being quiet, not confirming nor denying anything. So tell us your story. Like where did you go with this after that? Like were you just waiting to hear something, or did you like investigate what was going on?
I don't even remember. This was what, 17, 18 years ago, 19 years ago now almost. I know I wrote a column about how I wanted a Flash spinoff. I thought that would have been amazing, but I don't think I knew anything for sure. I did register a website for the Flash at that time, thinking they were going to go with it. Of course.
There's that article that will be linked in the show notes.
This is just about like several different spin-off videos, right?
This one was, I think this is the one because you were talking. But it's mainly about the Flash.
Yeah, I also remember it just like when script sides went out, it seemed like there was a lot more attention paid to the casting of Bart than there was to anything else ever at that time. And that seemed a little odd.
Well, remember, season 4, this was like the major first DC character that came to the show. Because this is the thing, people need to remember that back in the day, it wasn't like the era where they were like tons of DC characters showing up almost every week. Like, in season 1 and 2 and 3, it was heavily self-contained in terms of like they used like smaller Superman characters here and there. We went to the Daily Planet, we met Perry White, but it was like the idea of a Bruce Wayne or a Wonder Woman or anything like that. It didn't come into like, quite honestly, until like something like season 4 where Bart shows up, and then we hear, in one episode we hear Barry Allen, Jay Garrick, Wally West, and then in season 5 we meet Aquaman, we meet Cyborg, and season 6, of course, the infamous arrival of Green Arrow, and but like so like this is like I think that's why it was such a big deal, because it's like it's like this is like a superhero that a lot of people know of that was probably, I also think, very hot back in the day of like, because the Flash rebirth have just happened. Geoff Johns was really revamping the Flash mythology in a lot of ways. So, but you mentioned here, like when you talked to Al Goff in a September 2004 interview, that it was completely up to the network. It certainly wasn't done with that in mind, but that episode looks terrific, and we plan to bring the Flash back later that season. Well, I don't know if this part aged that well because we didn't see Bart until like season 6.
That's okay. I mean, when I talked to Alan Miles for the 20-year anniversary, they did say they would sometimes put stuff in the press that they hoped would happen. Like, they did say to Wizard Magazine that they hoped to bring in Bruce Wayne in season 2. That never obviously happened, and it never got close to happening, unfortunately. But, they threw things, out there. It's so weird to think about. And that, like, if Smallville had been on during the Mark Pedowitz era, we definitely would have had a Bart spinoff within months.
Oh yeah, there would have been a Smallvilleverse, definitely.
Yeah.
And if not the Flash, then how about Lois Lane? If they call him Metropolis with regular Rans, please, Craig. Oh, so this is you're the one who made this whole Metropolis thing start happening for years, guys. Like when Smallville was like at the end of each season, before we knew if it was getting another season, there were always like these rumors that they were going to be like it's going to be a Metropolis sequel show. Tom was going to be Superman on full time. There was one year where they said that Smallville would end with season 9 and then come back the following Christmas with like a.
Oh my God! That rumor actually tricked me for a moment. Andy, you're muted, I think. Or maybe my sound is bad. I hear nothing. Hello?
Hello?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Cool. Because back then, this was happening right during Comic-Con, so of course we all got fooled.
Yeah. No, and they never, I usually could debunk stuff. That one I couldn't debunk. I actually believe that stupid rumor about that room where people went and saw Tom's new costume and everything.
Yeah, oh my God, I fell for it.
I fell for it too. I was like, maybe that's true. But also, do you remember when somebody put Metropolis up on IMDb as a thing that was happening? Like it was like the summer after Smallville ended.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was also quite awkward. Oh my God, don't try to go through one of my screen cap.
I'm sorry. I wanted to get to this logo because this was so funny. Like when they were marketing, because I didn't notice until like 10 years later, they were marketing as the Flash comes to Smallville.
Yeah.
And then they don't even call him the Flash because I think this is where like some of the movie rules started coming in, being like you can't call him the Flash. or something. I don't know if they. I don't know if they were allowed to use the name the Flash, but they weren't. But Alan Miles just wanted to build up to him being called the Flash. Because why would you put this in here?
All I know is that Jeph Loeb is the one that got them to be able to use the Flash, but it had to be Bart Allen for some reason.
Yeah, there was always this conspiracy amongst fans. I remember because I was one of them thinking that this was actually Barry Allen, but they just called him Bart, and then we were at some point to learn his name was Barry. But then season 11 happened, and we're like, nope, that's not him at all. But yeah, so basically there was never, like, at least as far as we know, and as far as from you heard from everyone you talked to, any intentional plans to do a Impulse show.
Not that I know of. No, just that they were going to try to do Justice League show. There was also this weird period where I think Miles said they tried to do a Lois Lane and Teen Titans type show where Lois trains young heroes or works with young heroes, which would have had Erica Durance. That also
that's Andy for you, kind of gross. Good to see you. Yeah, that's the weirdest idea, but I kind of would have been into it.
My Cecile avatar says, I feel Canada Graphs has entered the chat.
Yeah, for people wondering if Cecile's going to have a costume or not, go to Canada Graphs website. But yeah, but if you haven't seen Smallville, like, go check it out. And this is one of the best episodes of season 4 because Bart comes in a very, very important time for Clark, because it's senior year. He's getting closer to discovering his destiny. After Jor-El brainwashed him, and we're trying to look for some stones, and like listen, season 4 is like, it's funky weird, but I would take season 4 over most of season 6 that we got because I hate season 6 with a passion. Like, Justice is like one of the few episodes I actually love, but then there's all the like Sauna arc, and
it's still better than the Flash season 6. Andy, I'm sorry.
They did a noir episode with Jimmy Olsen. Are you kidding me?
That episode looked great. It might not have been the best story, but it looked great.
I don't know. Well, we're going to move on. Now we're going to jump back to Flash in movies because now we're jumping to David Goyer's Flash movie. So in an old interview with Movie Hole in December 2004, and this was...
Oh, no.
This is funny because he did this like the day before they were actually going to announce it. So in an interview with Movie Hole, and they asked him, talking for coming part, you're directing The Flash, and he goes, "Yep, they're going to announce The Flash tomorrow in the trade, which is Friday. They look after Batman, Warner Brothers, and they came to me and said, you did a great job on Batman. Next one we want you to get up and running is The Flash or Green Lantern. Are you interested?" I said I would love to do The Flash. I think there's a lot of cinematic possibilities that nobody's ever done. I'm interested in really pushing it and dealing with relativity. So near the end of the story, he's going to be like arriving before he left, and all that sort of cute little weird stuff. And it was he was aiming to do it definitely lighter than Batman Begins, because this was like on the edge of his success with Batman. And Goyer confirmed that it was going to be Wally West who would headline the film. And while no one had been cast, Goyer revealed all the way back then that he would love to have seen Ryan Reynolds play Wally West. Now, of course, their connection is that they worked on the Blade movies to get it together. And Goyer's script was tonally similar to Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movies. One of them was actually written by Al Gough and Miles Miller themselves, and also taking influence from Mike Baron, Mark Waid, and Geoff Johns' Flash runs. And also, like I said before, this is also another good thing you guys can check out over at the podcast Superhero Stuff You Should Know, because they did a huge episode where they broke down the script, which I had read many years ago, but I had to refresh my memory again. The link will be in the show notes. But the script was going to focus on Wally West as the primary Flash, and we would see we would witness him as a teenager learn and watching Barry Allen die. And we will see how he would get his powers from that. And Hunter Zolomon would be the main foe. And the Turtle was going to be one of the villains, believe it or not. And the way Barry died, it was very Crisis on Infinite Earths like. And the idea was that David Goyer was going to direct and write, but because of creative differences with Warner Brothers, which is something we would hear quite a lot about in those years, in the early 2000s, and they parted ways. Now, Craig, do you remember hearing about David Goyer doing The Flash?
Not at all. I mean, I might have at the time, but again, I'm old and I forget things. So that
What
was
do you think of the idea? Because this was, again, like, we had, I think, because Batman Begins came out in 2005. So, like, based on what you saw from Batman Begins, would you have liked the idea of him doing?
I actually didn't like Batman Begins. I know I'm in a minority there. I mean, definitely The Dark Knight was the best of that trilogy, but that was largely because the Joker was so good. But I do think Goyer is a good writer. He's definitely done some stuff I've liked a lot. I also think Ryan Reynolds would have been much more appropriate for Wally West than he was for playing Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
So I think that could have been kind of fun. I trust Goyer would have gotten it somewhat right. Whereas, some of these takes have been kind of all over the place. It's like, I think there's a reason, we've heard of David Goyer, but not some of the other writers we've brought up in this show.
And David Goyer went on to do some amazing things, like he worked on Krypton, one of our favorite shows. That
TV show.
Constant TV show. He worked on The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. And he also worked on, everyone, let's just be nice in the chat, but he did work on Man of Steel, which I personally loved. I understand if not everyone.
The best of them.
Sorry?
That was the best of the Snyder Superman movies to me. So
goodness gracious. And yeah, David Goyer, I think he is one of our better modern. I think there will be some angle aspects that I think is a little weird in how he tackles comic adaptation, but I can he's worked in comics. He worked on JSA with Jeph Johns, and I would still love to see him come back and do something with DC again. And I don't, but and also he also worked on one of the good shows that we love, Craig, The Sandman on Netflix.
Oh, that was such a great show. But you should give a spotlight to what Mind the Gap just said, because
I've always believed it was the right thing to make Flash Barry Allen in movies, because so many scripts were based on explaining Wally's origin. It was easy to just make Barry's origin.
Very true.
Yeah, because there was basically nods to Crisis in the script, or like the way that Barry vanishes, because he runs so fast that he becomes, like light energy and whatnot. And I'm really curious, like, what that script would look like. Because I also agree, because I love Ryan Reynolds, but like when I saw him as Hal Jordan, I was like 17 when I saw that film. So initially, like, I didn't know anything about Hal, and I felt like, oh, but he's great, I guess. But then I started
to be Hal.
Sorry.
He's too silly to be Hal to me.
That's what because I had never read a Green Lantern comic until after the movie, and I was like, why was he playing Hal? Like, aren't there like other? Because I remember the first time I saw Green Lantern in animation, or in media at all, was on Superman the Animated Series when Kyle Rayner showed up, which is a great episode.
I mean, I still feel like the Green Lantern the most recent generation is Jon Stewart. So
it is Jon Stewart, yeah, but that was the first time before Justice League came out, it was Superman the Animated Series, and that's when Kyle showed up. Right. But yeah, so basically this movie just never happened. But the movie history for Flash gets messier, because then we're now going to move on to this is kind of a bigger segment. So first of all, the arc that you see on the bottom of the corners is done by my good friend Arkin, who he did an amazing Flash. We did a collaboration for Flash episode 115, and so go check out his stuff on Instagram. I will, again, links will be in the show notes. But back in 2007, when Goyer left, a new Flash movie was then put in development. It seemed like at the same time as the Justice League Moral franchise was being brought up, Sean Levi, who's now going to be directing Deadpool 3, he was tapped to replace Goyer, and he was overseeing the writing of a new script, and he was looking to take a shift of tone from Goyer's iteration, but not necessarily turn into a comedy. So for Justice League Mortal, Adam Brody, we all love him from the OC, and we love him in the Shazam movies. He was actually going to play Barry Allen. And the late Anton Yelchin, who we know from Star Trek, who sadly passed away a few years ago, he was going to play Wally West. So Now, the Justice League Moral script that was going to be done by George Miller, and this is like very infamous. I think I really want to get Craig's perspective on this because this happened like in the midst of the writer's strike, the first one, not the one that is about to clearly happen. But Justice League Moral would have seen Barry help Wally understand his newly found speed, but the story, the premise of the Justice League Moral is Maxwell Lord was the main villain, and they would incorporate the Omax into this story. But when Barry gets mind possessed by Maxwell Lord, he will then be transformed to something known as Omag Ultra. In order to get out of his control, Barry would have to sacrifice himself, and he ran so fast that he reached light speed. And as he died, he managed to destroy Maxwell and Omax. And with the with the film ending with Flash's death, Wally would literally take up Barry's mantle because the suit was all that was left after Barry vanished. So there you go. There you go. You all got your vanish. You don't need to see it on the TV show.
That sounds so complicated.
Yeah, and here's the way to remember. Okay, so this is 2007.
Right.
Superman Returns had just come out a year before that. Batman Begins had been a smash success in 2005. Smallville was in its 5th or 6th season and was, like killing it on all cylinders. And they still want to do a Justice League movie as a new universe. They would have started as a new universe, from what I understand, and then do spin-off movies. And supposedly that's what Wally would have then starred in Levi's spin-off. Levi would eventually depart the project because of commitment to Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian. David Dobkin replaced him in late September 2007, but by March 2008, Justice League Moral was scrapped because of the tax situation. There was a writer's strike, and the spin-off film just ceased to exist. Craig, I want to hear your mindset around this time. You're hearing about Justice League Moral. You're hearing about all these things.
My focus at the time was still on television.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't follow the movies as hard. I remember being a little confused because, it was separate from everything else. It's like, oh, we've got Batman in these very successful movies, but we're having another Batman in this. I also never quite understood if Justice League Mortal was a live action movie, if it was going to be one of those weird, like stop motion-ish type stuff.
It was live action because they had even gone to Australia. Like their costumes were made, like everything was getting ready to roll, and then
I was just very confused by what was going on. There were a lot of question marks at the time. I don't remember being particularly excited for it at the time, just because it was so confusing. Because you have to realize, like 2008, that era, 2007, you didn't have a million websites writing about these things. So if there's news, it might drip out on Variety or something, but that would be it. Like we didn't have access to the intel that we have now. And so that might have kind of gotten in the way of knowing much about what to expect. But so like that was off of my radar. I didn't really pay attention to the movies at that point.
Would you like this casting idea of Adam as Barry and Anton as Wally?
It's a sure, why not kind of thing. Obviously, I feel people like Grant and Keenan were better than they would have been, even though those are great actors. It's just I love what we ultimately got. I might have thought Adam Brody even then was a little not right for the Flash. I don't remember why I would have thought that, but he wouldn't have been my first choice. Even though I like Adam Brody, don't get me wrong.
Oh, I love Adam Brody. Like I remember on the OC. I mean, his character was a huge comic book nerd and so on.
Yeah.
But what I never appreciated, because this is a theme that keeps coming up for some of these old Flash movies and shows that were trying to be made, is that Barry is just a vehicle to get Wally in there, and it just goes to show like, wait, so this is happening like 3-5 years after Barry was brought back in Flash Rebirth. But yet, media was still so determined to just use Barry as like, let's just have him as the Flash so he can die so that Wally can become the new Flash.
Well, you have to realize the people writing the movies at that time were
probably grew up on Wally.
Yeah, people closer to my age, where like when I started buying Flash comics, Barry was dead and Wally was the Flash. And then Mark Waid did that Return of Barry Allen storyline that was so good, which I'm not going to spoil it, but it basically reading it, you're like, you know what? I think I really do like Wally. And after that storyline was printed, people stopped calling for Barry to come back. But then the regime at DC became people like Geoff Johns who wanted to bring back the icons, and that's how we got,
It's not a bad thing, Like, I think everyone has their taste.
Yeah.
I still feel I feel there's room for every Flash. I mean, I would still challenge a writer to take on a Flash family book at some point. Because one reason I'm not reading Flash right now in comic, just besides being busy with work, is that I don't like that we've essentially had to sacrifice Barry, like he's alive, whatever, but he's pushed off to the side so that
Because
OG
Wally
Wall.
is Flash.
Right. I just.
Oh, you say I'm right. Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. I get it, but all at the same time, I feel like there's room for all of them. Like,
well, right now, most of them are appearing in the series.
A deep dive for another time. But yeah, so this movie ceased to exist, and the writer's strike and the tax situation with Just Leave Mortal caused the movie to no longer be in the works, and supposedly the spin-off film also got scrapped. Now we're going to move on to a kind of short-lived project, which was Jeph Johns and Dan Mazeau's Flash movie. So in 2009, Jeph Johns and Dan Mazeau were hired to co-write a new Flash movie script, with Johns serving as a consultant too. Charles Rowan was attached as a producer, but revealed in October 2009 that he had been removed from it because the Flash was speeding in the direction that Warner Brothers had in mind, leaving the possible film in uncertainty. Mazeau came out and claimed that quote unquote the Flash had not been hobbled. Everything is moving forward as planned. I'm still writing the script, and Jeph Johns still consulting. Flash fans have no cause for concern, and in my opinion, lots to be excited about. But then in February 2010, reports claimed that Warner Bros. Expected to announce a DC slate in the coming months, including characters like the Flash. For time's sake, because this kind of merges into a different project, so let's just do that, because otherwise this could be a really huge long segment. Because then in late February 2010, Craig Berlanti was hired to direct the Flash movie. On June 9, 2010, Berlanti, Michael Green, and Marc Guggenheim were hired to pen a treatment of the film. The script was going to be based on a recent run by Johns. Rumors from the Hall reported in July 2013 swirled that a Flash movie was to be announced, and Warner Bros. Hall H presentation for 2016, along with Justice League movie 2017 and Batman Superman for 2015. I was at that panel. No such announcement came. Instead of the end of the month, and this was kind of funny, at the end of that month, a Flash TV spin-off from Arrow was announced by the CW, and the rest is history. Guggenheim did reveal in 2017 that the Flash movie that he and Berlanti were working on would have featured Hal Jordan. So I guess this is just me estimating now and speculating that this was likely going to be part, like if this movie had been done, it would have been part of the Ryan Reynolds universe, because that was a starting point initially for them. They were going to, this was going to create a new, if the movie was successful, I believe, and this is from rumors of sorts that I got to know many years later, that were claiming that Man of Steel would have connected to Green Lantern somehow. I'm very curious what from their Flash script made it into the show, because I bet you Greg and Marc, at least Greg, used things from the Flash movie script for the TV show.
Well, I'm sure like the stuff that's kind of from Flashpoint because you got to realize before the Flashpoint comic came out, the whole thing about Barry's dad being in jail and all that was not a part of the story. Like, there are comics in the Silver Age where both of Barry's parents are very alive, and they just hope we have forgotten that. So I assume those aspects would have been in their Flash movie. And it's interesting to know that Greg Berlanti had been thinking about the Flash that far back. But you know what? We got our Flash TV show, and that's great.
I remember also that I think the reason they got hired to begin with was that was that because they were like essentially Green Lantern back at the time had been testing well, I guess. So they felt confident in hiring them, because they were developing not just a treatment for the Fly, but they were also being hired to work on the treatment for Green Lantern 2. So I'm very curious, like, this felt this was gonna be the start of a new universe, and that I feel like Barry and because we know in the comics Barry and Hal are like very close with each other, so
We also
I'm
don't know the timeline because I thought Guggenheim and Berlanti were removed from Green Lantern somewhere around the process, and that's why it's so messy.
I think the truth is gonna always be somewhere in the middle, because like that was the thing. Like I didn't even try to get into the Green Lantern movie history because they was so convoluted. I'm like, there's too many different sources and they're all conflicting with each other. But once again, Berlanti got his Flash show, and it's his most successful show in the Arrowverse. So
and he almost got to do
Green Lantern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're getting to the end, and this thumbnail was not fun to make because it was confusing as hell. But the long mystery history with the DCEU's Flash movie. So, again, I've just made this as bullet points because, guys, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So we're gonna go back in time. The Flash movie was properly announced on October 15, 2014, with Ezra Miller cast as a digital lead, eyed for a March 23, 2008 release date. By April 2015, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were working on the story treatment with a chance of also directing. In October 2015, Seth Grahame-Smith, who ironically would go and work on the Green Lantern show with Craig Byrne for HBO Max, he ended negotiating to write and direct The Flash based on Lord and Miller's treatment. This would have been his directorial debut, but in April 2016, he left the film because of creative differences. Again, as I said before, that term comes up a lot. By June 2016, Rick Famuyiwa was tapped to replace him, and it was through this new director that we got Kiersey Clement cast as Iris West because they had worked together on a different film. And August of that year, Ray Fisher was tapped to reprise the role of Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. Famuyiwa also completed a revision that year that would have included Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Billy Crudup's Henry Allen. But, ladies and gentlemen, by October 2016, Famuyiwa left the project as he felt that he wasn't able to come together creatively with the studio, which didn't like his more mature direction for the story. And then now I call this the 2017 mess. We have a page one rewrite by Joby Harold in January 2017. Then Robert Zemeckis and Matthew Vaughn were eyed to direct the film. Sam Raimi, Mark Webb, and Jordan Peele had all turned down offers to direct it. The film got announced as Flashpoint at Comic-Con 2017, and Dan Mazeau again contributed to the script at the time. Geoff Johns said the movie would explore an alternative Batman, drawing heavily from his Flashpoint comic, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan was game to reprise the role. Then we go to January 2018. Spider-Man Homecoming's John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein entered negotiations to write and direct the film and were confirmed by March 2018. The title was once again changed to The Flash, but because of a lot of scheduled conflict and so on, the film, it didn't look like the film was going to start filming anytime soon. But in mid-March 2019, it was revealed that Ezra Miller was writing a new version of the script with Grant Morrison. Now, I want to point out to everyone in the chat, Grant Morrison goes by, just like with Ezra, they go by they, them pronouns. So if you refer to either of them in the chat, please use they, them. And
you might see both of them in DC projects coming soon.
Miller allegedly didn't like the light-hearted approach, despite it being what Warner Bros. Wanted. If Warner Bros. Had not liked their vision, they would have had to often cast a new actor because Miller's holding deal was expected to end in May of that year. Morrison revealed in 2020 that their script was influenced by Back to the Future, but that WB, of course, wanted to explore the multiverse and other DC characters instead. People, it's called The Flash. Anyway. Morrison also denied reports that Miller wanted a darker take, but it simply stated that they had dark aspect in the story similar to Flashpoint. But now we're getting towards the end. By November 2019, Miller was still attached to the film, despite WB rejecting their and Morrison's draft. Francis Daly and Goldstein departed the project, as Birds of Prey's Christina Hudson was tapped to write a new screenplay, and Muschietti was then tapped to direct, and the rest is history, and the Flash movie is now heading into theaters on June 16, 2023. Now, I do have one interesting... Okay, so this is an alleged... Because I remember seeing this float on Twitter. It's an alleged description of what Grant Morrison and Ezra Miller's script was going to focus on. In this film, if this is true, Barry would have been established as the hero of Central City at this point for at least 1.5 years. It wouldn't be an origin story, but we would have been presented with flashbacks to the night his mother died, when Barry got struck by lightning, up to him coming up with various designs of the costume, and there was a callback to the Batman vs Superman sequence where we see Barry through surveillance footage, and Barry and Iris, this is the one that crushed me. And West Allen fans, get ready for this. In this story, Barry and Iris were no longer a couple. They tried to make it work, but they couldn't make it work. They're still close to, as she's the only one in the city who knows that Barry is the Flash. Barry would still be learning the limit of his abilities and the Speed Force and the concept of time travel. He even takes it a step further to travel to Keystone, Pennsylvania, to speak to a physicist who happens to be an expert on it. You're gonna moan so hard, Craig. He would meet Professor Peter Carrick, who mysteriously knows Barry's name before he even introduces himself and basically breaks down how speed can break into time travel, but stresses the ramification of it. Why, Peter?
I thought you were going to say Dr. Cecile Horton.
Barry would be haunted by his mother's death and the red-eyed monster from that night. I wonder who that could be. His trauma, paranoia, and losing another loved one is the main reason he couldn't make it work with Iris. The film's plot revolves around Barry investigating the murder of detective and Barry's mentor, John Alvens, who watched over him as a kid, basically their Joe West. The investigation is botched, and the CCPD catches the wrong guy. But Barry could already figure out that this is the case, so he takes a step further and investigated as the Flash. It's revealed that Alman's partner, Officer Lisa Snart, killed him in order to strike the CCPD, while an alpha-level metahuman, Sam Scudder, broke out of her brother Leonard Snart in a prison convoy passing through Central City. Yeah, so
Golden Globe.
Yes, and no, there will never be a Steel Horn movie. Canagraphs. Snart decided to stay in Central City with Scudder to track down a scientist that is hiding, Dr. Howard, who experimented on Scudder. With the help of his sister, they would have found ways to rebuild the Colton. And then Snart and Scudder would go on a rampage for Central City to track down Howard and eventually find him. Snart holds him back from killing and instead offers to spare Howard in exchange for one small favor. Flash eventually would track them down at their hideout and find them finds them hopelessly outgunned. Scudder's abilities catch Barry by surprise, while Snart frees Barry's leg and breaks it, forcing him to run away. On top of that, the Flash is framed for killing the Albans. He barely makes it out alive when chased by the police. He would seek comfort with Iris. Yeah, essentially this story is like a big rogue story. And Scudder would kidnap Iris, and Snart would be sending a public message to the Flash to make a choice to stop him from leaving or save Iris. Skipping ahead a little bit, Professor Garrick would be revealed to be a speedster, of course. In the Speed where he glided a familiar red-eyed demon briefly before being attacked by a zombified version of a Flash. And then Professor Garrick would save him. And now he revealed that he's going by Jay, who doesn't recognize Barry at all, but he guides him out of the Speed Force. So I guess there's a little time travel there. And Barry and I would get back together again, and Captain Cold would become a metahuman, kind of like the New 52. And I'm trying to scroll down through the most interesting part about this. Gary gives him a Flash ring for his new suit, assuring him that I don't need it anymore. And it reveals that it's heavily implied that Jay Garrick is from another timeline or universe altogether, as there hasn't been a history and existence of any other Flash, but it's deliberately left ambiguous. So it's kind of like the Earth 2, like Earth 1, Earth 2 concept from the Silver Age, where Barry meets Jay Garrick for the first time. Flash issue 123. He warns Barry not to play with the fabric of time and space, as it can create some kind of paradox. The final scene shows how Lisa Snart in jail swearing to avenge his brother and vows revenge on Flash for killing him. And Barry sitting with his father, revealing that he is the Flash and assuring him that his mother's killer is still out there, essentially setting up for the Zoom, Reverse Flash, whatever you want to say. Now, again, I don't know if this is actually, I haven't been able to verify it. All I know from sources I've talked to over the years is that a lot of the early Flash movie scripts that were developed between Rick, Seth, and Grant Morrison, the Rogues played a really big part in all of them for some reason, which I actually prefer, because now I just want a Flash movie where the Flash just fights Rogues or something. I don't need, I'm excited for the Flash movie that's coming out next month, but I don't need a bunch of Batmans. I'm fine with Supergirl being in it. But like some of these concepts sounds like, why couldn't this be the first Flash movie? And then we can do Flashpoint. But we know a new DC universe is coming. So Craig, you and I, we have followed the Flash movie to some degree together since the Flash TV show started. It's, as you can hear, it's messy. And why do you think it was so difficult for Warner Bros. To make a Flash movie during a period where they had a successful TV show running on the CW?
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to say is I remember when they made that announcement in 2014. It was the day after the second episode of The Flash got huge ratings, the Flash TV show. It just seemed so disrespectful, like, oh, look, we finally proved that The Flash can be done. I think there are a number of reasons why the movie hasn't happened before now. I don't think it says anything about what side you are on anything with the movies to say DC movies have been a mess for at least the last 10 years. It's like they're different people with their own agendas trying to push their own things and their own projects. The creative talents weren't allowed to be their creative selves. I mean, it's like regardless of how you stand on Zack Snyder, for example, it was really crappy for Warner Brothers to push that movie, the Justice League movie, through without just waiting for him to finish it. Stuff like that. So you have aspects like that where everybody wants to have a say and wants to change things. And, and of course, Ezra Miller, they've been kind of a mess these last couple of years, which probably hasn't helped. But it's like, it just seems like the right departments weren't agreeing on what they wanted. And that's why it didn't happen. Whereas, with the Flash TV show on the CW, you had everybody under one roof, which would have been Greg Berlanti. And,
it's like they're Kevin Feige almost for television.
Yes, he was. And whereas I think DC, you just had these power struggles between different people in the movies, whether it's the Warner Brothers movie execs or might have been Geoff Johns, whoever. And that's no offense to Geoff either. It's just creative talents have strong opinions. So, of course, they're going to have conflicts. I mean, I'm hopeful for this Flash movie. It seems a lot of people have said that, I think James Gunn said it was going to be great. And so maybe it will be. I personally there are things I definitely would have different. Obviously, I'm excited to see Michael Keaton again. But I would much rather see Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Flashpoint Batman because that makes sense. Because that's what was the comic book story. I don't think we need multiple Ezra Millers. Especially since we have Michael Keaton in this movie. Bring in Daddy Flash, John Wesley Shipp, and have him team up with Michael Keaton. That would be amazing. So, who knows? It just seems like a mess. Yeah, Mind the Gap just said maybe that's why cinematic universe shouldn't be a thing.
But I don't agree with that because we can look at the MCU and see that it, especially the earlier years, that it works, but you need commitment. And that's the thing. I feel Warner Bros. Has never, and I'm talking about Warner Bros. Pictures now, they have never fully committed to a cinematic universe. Because here's the thing, whether you like Zack Snyder's ideas or not, the man had an idea for at least a 5-part story. If you like it or not, that's perfectly up for debate. And we can all disagree about it. But it was there was someone who was trying, because the thing was even in Justice League 2 and 3, he was going to draw upon plot threads from the Flash movie, where initially Barry would have faced Captain Cold, because Captain Cold was going to be part of Lex's Legion of Doom in Justice League 2. But again, Warner Brothers they didn't know how to commit. That's why I feel like we need something like these, dude. And again, it's such as so much of that content that we have loved for the last few years are now getting canceled. Again, it's like we're 1 month away from the upfronts, and we have no idea what's going to happen with Superman Lois or Gotham Knights. Right. If your Max are almost done with all the shows, we know that
we'll get more Sandman coming, but who knows when.
Yeah, which is for all we know, what if David Zaslav rejects that too? No, we don't want to work with Netflix.
Well, they're making a lot of money selling it to Netflix, so I'm sure that's going to happen.
But I just don't. When it comes to this, because when I was looking through this movie history, and I got lost to some degree, and I'm like, this is a freaking joke. I cannot believe it's been this messy to get a Flash movie made. Like, there's a ton of scripts that have never been used.
Yeah.
And I just, and then here's the thing. What I feel about the Flash movie is that it's going to reset the DCU into the DC universe. So again, when we finally get a Flash movie, again, they're just using it as a vehicle for another franchise. For me, a Flash movie would have focused on maybe the Flash family dealing with the Rogues, or Barry, like from a cinematic standpoint. But again, instead, it's just we're telling Flashpoint, because the thing is, like I said it on the podcast before, is that I don't like that Flashpoint is now used so loosely. I mean, like, again, Nora Allen is an integral part of Barry's life, but we haven't had any time to follow this Barry and his emotions and what he has dealt through with Nora's death. And now we're going to jump into a movie. Again, we know the history because we watched the show, we read the comic, but like we're now jumping into a story where we're just going to do Flashpoint, so we can bring in Michael Keaton and a Supergirl, but then also reset the DCEU into the DC universe. So again, like what this movie is not going to mean much in the end, because it's not like, again, it's going to be the DCEU ends with the Flash movie.
Well, I think this is a larger discussion about DC and Marvel movies right now. I love multiverse stuff. I am over multiverse stuff. And I think to the general public, it can get confusing at a certain point. It's like, oh, Ben Affleck is Batman. No, Michael Keaton is Batman. And I know they're going to probably try to clean it up at the end of this movie. But I do also kind of disagree a little bit about, oh, well, we don't get to know this Barry Allen or Nora yet, because we cared about Nora and we cared about Barry within like 5 minutes of the pilot of The Flash in 2014.
I will do one better. I cared from the first Arrow episode.
Yeah, but a lot of that was also due to how good Grant was in the role, and how good, I mean, when The Flash aired, how great John Wesley Shipp and Michelle Harrison were. And, that was very helpful to get us. And maybe we'll have those kind of connections in this Flash movie. I think the Flash movie also obviously has the added weight of, I mean, they say they might want to do more movies with Ezra, but Ezra is so problematic and is getting so many chances that I don't know if they were going to want to keep going with them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't see. Even if this movie, as I said, I think that anything from the DCU is that they're moving away from it. Like, I think it's just fair to say they're moving away from it, and it seems like I also think that this is going to be the last time we see Barry. And like, I think they're getting ready. I think for the next iteration, which I think will focus on someone like Wally or Bart.
Yeah, maybe. We'll have to see.
But yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating to, out of all these projects that we've talked about tonight, Craig, which one is the one that you're kind of like, I kind of would like to know more about this?
Oh, the 2003 WB pilot, because I'm a TV guy.
I mean, I am too. Maybe I will make it my mission to find out if I can.
Well, if you don't, I will, because.
Or wait, what if we do it together?
Maybe. I don't know. We might step on each other with that, but we could see.
We'll see. Julie, hi, Julian. Good to see you. Please give me Wally. Yes, I'm sure you will get Wally. But let's go through the comments a little bit before we wrap up the show. So let's see. And Monica says, I expect if the movie to success, it will be attributed to Keaton. I think this is Ezra's last movie. I do think too. And I think what they're going to rely on, and Craig, you will recognize this lingo. They're going to use the whole, they completed their contract. So like, again, instead of saying fire or anything like that, they're probably just going to be like, we have fulfilled our commitment with Ezra Miller. And now, right now, there's no plans to extend or renew or sign a new deal. I think that's what's going to happen.
P.S. Grant Gustin is the Flash. XOXO Gossip Girl.
Gossip Girl. Kitty Carly says, James Gunn's recent comment about super fatigue in films, I think, are spot on. If you don't tell a good story, the fans won't buy into it. I agree. Canberra says, inserts witty comment that everyone will agree with here, while also disagreeing with everyone else, despite the fact they're agreeing with me, who they obviously also agree with. chaos. CG chaos. Kenneth Carly says, hopefully the DCU Flash, we can actually spend time with the CW TV show. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, we need to spend some time with whoever's the next Flash is going to be. Kenny Carly says, I like more the classic DC films like Superman the movie and Superman 2, Batman 89, and Batman Returns more than the new films except for Wonder Woman, Shazam, and Aquaman. Fair enough.
I agree.
Let's see what other. Yeah, Candy Carly, the Flash movie history has been a messy one for sure. Mine, I guess, is Grant Morrison wanted to make a Flash OG
original graphic novel,
but it was never made. I wonder if ideas from that were in their script. Morrison described the original graphic novel as a speculative science fiction story. That would make sense because writers, they do that a lot. Like, they will go and like use ideas from other screenplays they haven't been able to use. So, I remember there was horror elements in some articles. I bet that became Reverse Flash. I think that was supposed to be setting up the sequel. I felt that was supposed to be like the demons with the red eyes.
Oh my God, Canada Graphs just asked a great question.
Do you think there will be any future TV shows down there that will extend out to Cecileverse more?
Ghostmaker.
Ask Todd Helbing. Kenny Carter, I think it could be 10 to 15 years before we see Barry Allen again in the DCU, but we'll see. Anything can happen. I don't think we're going to have to wait that long. I just feel that when we get the next Flash in James Gunn's new universe, I feel like it will be Wally or Bart, and that Barry his fate is like ambiguously unknown, or like he's not necessarily dead, but he's also not necessarily alive either. Like, maybe like they will do the whole plot twist of like he's trapped in the Speed Force or something. What?
I think Cecile needs to help find him.
Oh my God! Stay on focus, Craig. Stay on focus. Man, I guess after Mad Max Fury Road, people have said how much they wish Justice League more was made. I think it would have been a mess. See, because the script that came out from the script has leaked over the years, and I don't know if that was the final version of, but like I kind of dug the idea. Let's see, a lot of people saying that they would have loved to see Wally. Some of these comments have also gone through already. Kenny Carl brought up an interesting point about Jeph Loeb. Jeph Loeb writing a Flash movie would have been interesting for sure. I do wonder VFX-wise how they would have done that since CGI was in its very early days, late 80s, pre-T2. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would look. I mean, they probably would have just done what they did on the John Wesley Ship TV show. Again, because the electricity thing didn't come into comics like much later. And when John Wesley Ship would run, like you would just see him run as a blur. In regular sense. So the Flash would have been a meteor freak. Is that what you're saying? I'm not saying that he would have been a meteor freak, but also I'm not saying that he would have been a meteor freak. But I'm just saying that the alien spheres came during a meteor shower. And also, if we think about it, Craig, who is mentioned in the Smallville pilot?
The fastest man alive. But if you pause it and look at the article, it does not mention Barry Allen. It's some kid with some other name.
I mean, they could have changed that. I don't know.
But they did.
The new Flash in Gunn's universe will be the Velocity 9 Frost version. That would require them to remember that she's actually dead and then bring her back. I think we've gone through most of these comments.
Yeah.
I'm. This was a very fun episode because again, it just allowed me to do a deep dive on things that we've read and heard about here and there over the last couple of years, but it was it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous how much of these things never happened. But before we go, so I'm gonna announce something real quickly that we're doing. So next Thursday we're gonna be back for our final special edition episode of the Flash podcast, and it's gonna be something that involves all of you guys, and that is our call-in show that has also been on my bucket list for quite some time. So the way it's going to work is that, so here's the thing. I've actually been able to put up all the shows that are coming up for Flash Podcast for the next few weeks leading up to the series finale. So once this episode has finished streaming, I will update the description with the link to that. And the way you're going to be able to participate through the call-in show, and this is a strict rule. this needs to be from people that have been regular, like as listener feedback that we've seen in the chat, that we know follow the podcast on Twitter, and there's gonna be rules of like maybe 5 minutes top per person, and the way you're able to join is through a StreamYard link that we will be moderating and then bring you in so you can talk about whatever you want about the Flash TV show. So, yes, Julian has a good point, because Julian, who made our amazing logo for Multiverse of Color, I was on Discord with him when I was making it, and it took me about 2 hours, because I was like, I can't find a good shot of Iris talking on the phone. So it was a struggle, y'all. It was a struggle. So yeah. But keep an eye on, keep your eyes open on social media for when we update the call-in show for next week. So you can join us on the StreamYard link, and there will be full rules on how you can participate. But we want to hear from you guys before we get into the final 5 episodes of The Flash season 9. So yeah, that's what's up. That's going to be the last special edition we ever do. That will be the 50th special edition, which is why I call this one 49.5, because I can. It's my show. And then, yeah, 5 more episodes. So there you go. But Craig, first of all, thank you so much for joining us tonight, going through this messy memory lane, so to speak. Where can people find you on social media, and tell them about KSI TV and all your amazing websites?
I feel you can watch me as Cecile every week on The Flash, the lead character. No, I'm just kidding. You can find me on ksitv.com, flashtvnews.com. I've got an interview with Stephen Amell coming up in a couple days. Also, both of us are speaking to Danielle Pennebaker, so we'll both have our own interviews coming up to promote episode 909, which is a huge episode for The Flash. A bunch of people come back. Our buddy Canada Graff's on here. Surely has some photos that you can see. Maybe you can even see a costume on Cecile if she gets one. I know that's the big draw for the season. But yeah, I just have fun writing about this stuff. And it's fun to be able to come onto a show like this and talk about some of the things we never got to see. So thanks for having me, Andy.
Of course. I appreciate you coming on, and I always love talking, because we follow these things for a living. It's always fun, and it's like, again, it's been fun to see the reaction in the comments of being like, "Whoa, they're gonna do that! They're gonna do that!" Yeah, things got weird with the Flash and media. But yeah, you can find me at Anback on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Vero, Twitch, everywhere on social media at Anback. I'm also a host of Endless Multiverse, which is on Chainsaw's channel, youtube.com Chainsaw Reacts, Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm also senior writer for Screen Rant. So check out all my articles, news, interviews, you name it. And I'm also the editor-in-chief of Multiverse of Color, which is a multiverse of endless possibilities. So don't forget, next week, call-in show. More details will come out on social media, but yeah, there will be things in the description, in the video description, the show notes, so that you guys can keep up with what's going on. But before we go, as always, here are our plugs, so you know where you can find the Flash Podcast at.
To find exclusive content and new episodes from the Flash Podcast, visit theflashpodcast.com. There you'll also find the latest info about the Flash TV show, movie, and comics.
TFP never strays far. So please find the Flash Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you should ever need us. And we need you to send us listener feedback on any of those platforms after each episode of The Flash. You can send your feels sporadically or wait for the graphic that appears every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, begging you to leave us your comments so we know you love us. XOXO, Gossip Flash.
Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the Flash Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Want to support the Flash Podcast? Leave a review and 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, which helps more Apple Podcast users find the show.
Enjoy what we're doing? Then you should check out the entire DCTV Podcast Network at dctvpodcast.com, where we have amazing shows for The Flash, Superman Lois, all the ongoing and upcoming DC shows on HBO Max, the upcoming DC Studios movies, The Sandman, as well as DCTV After Dark, and lots of other fantastic podcasts, all available at dctvpodcast.com. You can follow the network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram simply at DCTV Podcast. Last but not least, be sure to subscribe to the network's mega feed on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts.
DCTV Podcast has its own TeePublic store where you can get all sorts of fabulous Arrowverse and DCTV merchandise to broadcast your fandom in the real world. Click on the link in the show notes to start shopping and help support the network so we can keep making all these great shows. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DCTV Podcasts and ring the notification bell for up-to-the-minute news about live broadcasts, exclusive interviews, special clips, and lots more.
And because we can never get enough of your beautiful words, you can also email The Flash Podcast at theflashpodcast@gmail.com anytime you want. Use it for longer listener feedback, questions about The Flash and DCTV, miscellaneous thoughts, or fanfic recommendations. We read every email, so don't worry, no Flash fan left behind.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Craig, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Links to all of his stuff, Flash TV News, KryptonSite TV, and the entire KryptonSite TV verse, KryptonSite verse. That's kind of, I like that, KryptonSite verse. You can find it in the show notes. But yeah, next week, call-in show for the final special edition here on YouTube. So join us on Thursday, April 20th, ironically, 4:20 at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and join us and talk about The Flash with us live here on the podcast. And then, starting on the 27th, we're going to be doing our final coverage of the final 5 episodes of The Flash, Season 9. We're looking forward to it. But for Tatiana, Breeze, and Lacey, I'm Andy B.
I'm Craig.
Are you sure that's the name?
This is The Flash Podcast?
Well, what is your actual name, Ms. Horton?
The Seal.
The Seal. And we'll see you next time on The Flash Podcast. Good night, everybody.